When you create a chart, you are not restricted to the fields that exist in your data source. You can create calculations from the data that exists to automate summations and other mathematical tasks related to your data fields. You can specify operators, fields, variables, and functions when creating a calculation. A calculation takes up no storage space in the data source and is created only when needed. You can create the following types of calculations: a virtual field, or define, which is evaluated as each record that meets the selection criteria is received from the data source. You can create a define on a field in the field list. A calculated value, or compute, which is performed on the aggregated values of the fields after all the data that meets the selection criteria is received, sorted, and summed. You can perform a compute on a field that has been placed in a chart bucket. Quick transforms, which apply analytical functions such as standard deviation and correlation to measure fields in your chart. Quick transform calculations are performed using the aggregated values of the fields to create post-aggregation or compute fields. Quick transforms can be performed on a field that has been placed in a chart bucket. To create a basic calculation, you can use the Calculator dialog box. The location from which you create a new calculation determines the type of calculated field that you create. You can create a define from the data pane or a compute from the display pane. On the data pane, right-click a measure or dimension, such as customer city, from the menu that displays, and select New Calculation. This creates a define with a title and field format based on the field that you selected. You can add fields, variables, functions, operators, and conditions such as if, then, else to your calculation. You can also change the name and format of the calculation field. After clicking OK, the field is added to the data pane at the bottom of the measure or dimension group whence it was created, and you can select this field for use in your chart. Add the define to your chart. To create a compute instead of a define, right-click a measure field in a bucket. The Calculate After Aggregation checkbox is selected by default, indicating that the field is a compute. Computes are often created for numeric fields. Once you have created a define or compute, you can edit it. In addition to creating define and compute fields, you can use quick transforms to gain quick and easy access to analytical functions such as standard deviation and correlation that you can apply to measure fields in your chart. Right-click the field you want to apply the transform to, point to Quick Transform, and select an option. Selecting a field to break on allows you to define a rolling aggregate across the entire table if no field is selected, or within any of the dimensions defined in your request. This is useful when you have multiple sort fields. You can choose whether or not to keep the original field in the bucket or replace it with the new field generated when adding a quick transform. The field is placed in the vertical bucket and displays on the chart by default. The legend is also updated to reflect this new field. To learn more, visit the WebFocus knowledge base, where you can search all technical topics and videos.